it's possible that I spend too much time these days either with the global environmental change community, whose concern is with the onset of the Anthropocene, or too much time in China, where one can see how disastrous it will be if the rest of the world continues to try to emulate the unsustainable American lifestyle. But I think that we are in a situation in which transformative change will be essential if we as a species are to have a continuing viable place on this planet. The planet doesn't care, but the question is, what about us? And the real issue, it seems to me a lot of these questions and comments from the others has to do with the process of transformation and whether or not the kinds of things that happened at Rio+20, the change in UNEP, the possibility of high-level sustainable development, even Susanna's global citizenship, are sufficiently, as Stephen put it, enabling to move this process along in a timely manner, that is, sufficiently quickly to make a real difference. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against these things. So it's not like I say, well, it was wrong to make these kinds of changes with respect to UNEP and so on. But as I said in my opening remarks, the question is whether we will have to suffer from some more catastrophic experience in order to bring about these kinds of changes. I hope I'm wrong, but I fear I'm right.
I just want to address Karen's question, and now prompted by Peter that says he hates the cloud analysis, and I have to say I've actually done one, a content analysis from 1972, the declaration of the Stockholm Conference through Rio+20. The change in narrative, and it goes back to Lauren's point about narrative, is actually quite dramatic. In 1972, environment was the focus. The declaration stated the protection and improvement of the human environment is a major issue which affects the well-being of peoples and economic development. Environment affects economic development. That narrative turned around, and by Rio+20, the document says it's economic development that affects. It's eradicating poverty is the greatest global challenge facing the world today and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. And in actually counting the times that the words appear, you do get a sense of how that has changed over time. Environment in the Rio+20 outcome document was mentioned 70 times in that 50-page document. 21 of those were in the string environment, what is the social, economic, and environmental, when it's referring to sustainable development. So only 50 times you have environment really by itself in the Rio+20 outcome document. Development, on the other hand, was mentioned 635 times.
Okay. Let me try to respond to just a couple of the questions. I'd love to have a longer conversation about Karen's question, but I think would require a longer conversation. Just I guess the one brief thing I would say is that I do see it as a bit of a logical consequence of where things, as a normative development, although I agree also that things are extremely contested now, and I think that's one of the difficulties, is that there is contestation underneath it that the norms mask. But anyway, we've had a longer conversation. Just to quickly in response to the role of the Brazilians, I want to be clear, I'm not blaming the Brazilians for the death of multilateralism. In fact, I think the Brazilians were brilliant. I think this is, the classic definition of the art of the possible. But instead, my point is that it reflects something about what's happening with multilateralism and what's possible with multilateralism. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, actually, I think depends on the answers to a couple of the other questions that were asked. So one of the other questions is about, multilateralism versus the national action. I think that was the question, versus national action. And I think here I would slightly rephrase it in the sense that, first of all, I don't think it's either or, but I think we have to live with the conditions we have, which is that this kind of multilateralism is not what's going to push things forward. But it's not just states. The question is, and one of the things, again, that I'm sort of trying to push towards a little bit is, and this links up to the second question, the other question about whether there's a contradiction between the top-down and the green economy and so on, is that I don't think these institutional changes, or I think it would be wrong to think of these institutional changes as these are the solutions to the problem, they're going to come up with the answers, and then it's just going to be implemented by the nation states. I think that the other things that we've heard, around the room about citizen participation, people actually haven't talked about it, but I wish they would have, about different sites of authority. My colleague Matt Hoffman talks about experimentation. I personally, I'm not going to throw my hope in those things either. But where's the agenda going is whether or not these kinds of ideas have an ability to translate into action, if that's at the nation state, if that's in polycentric forms of governance and so on. And the ideal of UNEP that I think Maria was laying out was in fact supposed to be this kind of organization, was to catalyze. But the question is can we adapt to this new environment where decisions aren't going to be made that are then going to be implemented, but that we can create an environment in which practical actions and support for those actions can be, disseminated, diffused, experimented with, etc. And it is a big open question, and maybe we will need a big bang in order to move things forward, or maybe we can do things to kind of, push the process.
Thank you, Stephen. I will sum up this roundtable by saying that I will not think and write exactly as I had before on this issue, had it not been for this conference. So in a counterfactual word, that's a real compliment to you. I'm not sure I'm going to change my conclusion, but I'm sure I really learned a lot, both in terms of process and substance, and also some very good questions. Thanks to the panelists and thanks to all of